Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about Modern. That's right, we're going to be talking a little bit about Modern. We've got a whole bunch of different decks to go over in the coming weeks. Of course, there's all sorts of ridiculous, silly, zany things we can do, and it's not all about Urza's Saga. That's right, we can do all sorts of stuff, even though Urza's Saga is pretty ridiculous. But that's okay. That's okay. So today we're going to be talking about Enchantress, and this is a old school deck. Or pretty much a good chunk of the cards were from the first like decade of the game. A lot of the cards that synergized very well with it. Obviously, they realized that it was very difficult to interact with enchantments, so they really toned down on the Enchantress stuff. So but you know, in modern, where we're at the moment in 2021, there's a lot of really powerful stuff, really powerful things going on. So you know, Enchantress seems like a perfectly fine deck there. There are a ton of different decks and a lot of things to account for, so that can make things pretty tricky. Um, but that's okay. There's a lot of different answers. There's a lot of good enchantments that we can use. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, yeah, there's like what, at least three, four, five different cards, six. I mean, yeah, they really pushed this hard. Um, I mean that makes sense. Obviously, the deck couldn't exist without like all of these additional new and or reprinted cards. So yeah, obviously things like Resurgent Belief, very good as a sort of replenish right after two turns, right? Because it has to spend. That's something to think about, the replenish guy, or even something like Open the Vaults, which doesn't make you wait but costs two more mana. Those are interesting cards. Depends on how the meta shakes out. Everything's pretty crazy now at the moment. Like the last week or so has been pretty nuts. Lots and lots of different decks. So the build of this deck will certainly change a lot depending on what you're going to see, including things like Splash Color, which we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, so lots of different cards, lots of really good cards. But we will see a lot of the same stuff in each of these decks, just because like they're going to revolve around certain things. And one of those things certainly is Solitary Confinement, which is an interesting reprint. This is one of the, I made a list of cards, and this is like one or two of the cards on that list that I thought wouldn't actually get reprinted, just because this is not something they like to do anymore. Like, they don't like these unfun enchantments. I mean, you might as well have asked them to like reprint the Abyss or something in some different form. But these kind of things they don't really do anymore. So it's a little surprising they reprinted Solitary Confinement, but that's okay. You know, their loss or your opponent's loss, I don't know. It's everyone else's. I mean, look, Magic's a zero-sum game when it comes to fun. So, yeah, let's, who cares? Who cares? We'll just jam Solitary Confinement all day long. And another nice thing is there's a lot of different enchantments to pull from. There's a lot of pretty good ones. A lot of pretty good ones. So yeah, this is pretty nice. But it's not like, you know, we have Moat or anything, or like some others. Elephant Grass, for example, is another a notable card we don't have access to. Um, so yeah, that's you know, well, I guess maybe that's for the best. Who knows? But yeah, there's a lot of different things we can do with the deck. A lot of different things we can change up. Lots of different stuff going on. So that's pretty sweet. But we're really kind of looking for like a pseudo prison thing, pseudo control thing, kind of ramp thing, all this sort of stuff kind of mixed up all into one. So yeah, let's go ahead and look at the deck list. All right, so we'll start out with the creatures. Um, First off, Sithis is one that is basically an auto include. This is our more or less our Gothian Enchantress replacement. Um, Yeah, it's an enchantment creature too, so it triggers off itself, and it also gains you a life in addition to drawing a card. So that's pretty sweet. So I think playing 4 of this is absolutely correct. I think it's very similar to Thalia, where it's like if they kill it, that just means like you just play your next one if you have another one in hand. And also, um, if they don't kill it, obviously the upside's pretty ridiculous. So yeah, this is one you definitely are going to play 4 of. Of course, it adds another wrinkle to the deck because when you have things like Cetessan Champion and Destiny Spinner, um, you're not really able to blink all removal like you are like in Legacy, right, with our Gothi Enchantress and Enchantress's Presence, where basically nothing works. So like how far do you lean in? How, do you play like Sanctum Weaver, right? I mean, how much do we really want to go in with this? And fortunately, a lot of these cards are enchantments, right? So for example, Destiny Spinner is an enchantment, Sithis is an enchantment. So like when they do come into play, you will get the triggers and stuff. So it's like even if they do get removed, it's still like card advantage. So it is something to think about, something that'll have to be hashed out. And again, it just depends on what kind of decks. Are we seeing removal light decks? Are we seeing decks with tons of removal? Like what's going on? But here we go, on to removal. This deck can take a little bit to get up and going. It can be a little slow. So on Thin Ice is an excellent enchantment. It's basically a exile something for free, but you need to put it on a snowland. Easy enough. We'll play a bunch of snow-covered forests and plains and an Arctic tree line that we can fetch up, which is pretty nice. So it's a snowland, but it's also produces green and white. But that also means you can put like your Utopia sprawls and stuff on it. Pretty sweet, pretty sweet. Then we have like Seal Cleansing. This could be like Seal Primordium. It doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously, like it's whatever. You're mostly just tutoring for it anyways, and you'll pretty much always have the mana to pay for it. So, I mean, it's good to have main deck. Obviously, this is very good against the Urza stuff because it's an enchantment land. So, Oblivion Ring, this kills stuff. Ghostly Prison, Solitary Confinement, yeah. Then we have a bunch of ramp stuff, Abundant Growth, Fertile Ground, Utopia Sprawl, Sterling Grove to protect your stuff, and then also, like, when it gets targeted, you can, of course, it's a top deck tutor. Enchantress's Presence is very good. And then we have stuff like Copy Enchantment, which I'll talk about a bit. And then Sigil and Starfield. These are, I'm not sure which one's better. I feel like one of each is fine. Starfield, of course, gives you recursion, right, which is pretty good. And then, of course, Sigil is much faster. Typically, you only have to play like 2 or 3 enchantments before you have a very serious clock. So 4/4 Flying Angels is pretty good. Nothing too wonky about the lands. You have your My Cradle just making your weird, like, your 5% chance to get like a non-functional hand means that happens even less. So yeah, Cradle's very good here. Hall of Heliod's Generosity is just another way to gain card advantage. This is a very good way to reuse just certain, like for example, Seal of Cleansing or something, or Destroyed Enchantments, or Recur Sterling Grove. Basically a free roll. Yeah. And the sideboard, well, we'll get into the sideboard in a sec. So let's go ahead and see if we can just go into some of the card choices a little bit more. Okay, so Copy Enchantment is, this card's really sweet. I like this a lot because your best draws probably are going to involve multiple Enchantresses presences because they're very difficult to interact with, or like it can act as like a Sterling, or act as another Sterling Grove to lock out any sort of like targeted enchantment removal. This can copy, like you can have double Starfield of Nyx with this, so that means you have 2 5/5s, which is quite good. So yeah, there's not much. It does a lot, and there's basically not a lot of downside. I think a splash color is pretty free, especially with the Utopia Sprawl and things like that. Which you might as well talk about Abundant Growth right now. In a lot of the legacy versions of Enchantress that I played, Abundant Growth is very, very good. You don't need a ton of mana fixing or ramp because you have Sarah Sanctum, right? So just the mana fixing and non-ramp nature is fine, and then of course it cantrips, and so combined with all the other like Enchantress effects, like it's a literal 1 mana Ancestral Recall, which is pretty good. Whether this should be for Abundant Growth and no Fertile Ground, or some copies of Sanctum Weaver, who knows? It's hard to sort of figure this out off the top of my head, especially with everything looking insane and totally different from week to week. It's basically impossible to figure out. Then of course, Ghostly Prison. This is one that you would pretty much always play as a couple copies of. It's just so good against the go wide decks, as well as just it's just being really sweet. This card's really sweet. I like Ghostly Prison a lot. There's something about it. Obviously, I just like propaganda style effects. But yeah, it's good against like any of the like the prowess decks, of course. Although those don't seem to be super prevalent at the moment. But I mean, who knows? It's just good against any code wide decks. Taxes their mana, slows them down, which is so even if they are getting damage through, it is at a much slower clip, which is exactly what you want. It gives you time to set up your solitary confinement locks, your enchantress stuff, all that good thing. And then of course the Tezzin Champion. This card's very sweet. This is very strong. This card can get pretty huge pretty fast. So it does interact on a different axis. Unfortunately, it does turn on your opponent's creature removal, but it does create interesting situations where, like, do I board it out? I guess I have to keep it in, right? But if you board out these, I mean, you can maybe create weird situations. Maybe you just don't play them like on a different week to sort of like next level your opponents. But I think just in general, it's probably worth it to have. It's just another Enchantress effect. It gets really big, so it can be like a quite big blocker, which is pretty nice. It has great art too, which can't really fault it for that. That's awesome. But yeah, whether Tezzin Champion needs to stay or go or whatnot, I mean, we'll have to see how the metagame shakes up. But I kind of just like it just as like another Enchantress effect that's also like can be a win condition. So that's pretty sweet. So let's go ahead and take a look at the sideboard a little bit. All right, so first and foremost, why are we splashing blue? Well, because Tron is like one of the decks, especially like off the top of my head, that's going to be very problematic. They have like O-Stone, they can have Olive Dust, they can have obviously all sorts of enchantment removal, as well as things like Ugin, big Ugin. That'll be a big problem. So Negate deals with all those, as well as just being flexible enough to be played anywhere else. So obviously Ceremonious Rejection is better versus something like Tron, but I like Negate more for its flexibility, and it's pretty easy to enable with, like, you know, Abundant Growth, Fertile Ground, your one main deck breeding pool, so on and so forth. So that's pretty good. Stuff like Nethermore and Wound Halo and stuff like that, these are again just sort of silver bullets, good cards to draw into, obviously good against certain like linear style of decks or whatever. You know, if they're trying to cast like their Living End or something, this card's pretty good against that, obviously. Same thing with like Orb of Silence. This is, I mean, maybe this is just better. Should be another Seal of Cleansing or Seal of Primordium. This is obviously quite good against a lot of the artifact decks. It can slow them down quite a bit. So yeah, this is an interesting card. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it should just be another Seal of Cleansing, but it'd be good, something good to try out. And of course, Wheel of Sun and Moon. This is split with Rest in Peace because I just don't know what's better. Obviously, Rest in Peace shuts off like Resurgent Belief or something like that if you want to play it, and also shuts off your Hall of Heliod's Generosity. But maybe that's obviously it's not a huge deal, and matches against the graveyard decks for Rest in Peace is just a slam dunk, and that pretty close to winning you the game outright. So yeah. who knows? Who knows? We'll have to see. Obviously, Wheel Sun and Moon has a lot more utility against decks that only minimally use the graveyard while still letting you use all your graveyard stuff. So we'll have to see. Of course, again, the sideboard, like the main deck, of course, is it's not set in stone. It's not set in stone. So there's a lot we can really do to really change up. I mean, we could, you know, like the main deck, we can even go like harder. We're like, okay, we're just gonna overload creature removal. We're gonna play 4 Sithis, 4 Sanctum Weaver, 4 Setessan Champion, just draw like infinite cards and try and get it that way. I mean, then there's other enchantment creatures like oh shoot, I can't remember the name of the centaur guys or the dryad guy or whatever. Yeah, those things, the one that let you play like lands from the top of your deck or play extra lands that are also prismatic omens. Yeah, those guys. Those are also enchantments too. Those could be interesting. Obviously, you don't have exploration effects. Well, you just don't have exploration in general. Obviously, the 3 mana ones are, you know, that one's okay too, but depends. Not sure, but there's a lot going on here. And because like enchantments, stuff like Oblivion Ring can answer pretty much any style of permanent, because you have such a robust draw engine, it's pretty strong, pretty powerful, and should let you be able to tune it to like whatever you want. And even stuff like you know, back to nature sort of tranquility effects, those can be answered, of course, by things like Resurgent Belief, right? So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting deck. I'm a little surprised they pushed it so hard, but also maybe not in a way. It's a sweet deck, and it's one that hasn't seen a ton of play in Legacy because like it's just too some decks are just too fast and don't interact on the correct axes. But that's not the case in Modern. I think this thing has legs. I think there's definitely a lot going on here. You can, of course, splash things like Blood Moon. Blood Moon, of course, certainly deals with Tron and like all the other like 4 and 5 color pile decks. So that's pretty sweet. So of course you can play stuff like Seal of Fire. Blue actually gives you Seal of Removal too. That's another thing if you want to play another seal effect. That's obviously very good against the Reanimator style decks. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it shakes up, but it's looking pretty good so far. But yeah, that's it. That's it for today, guys. So I hope you're feeling good. I hope you're liking this. I mean, obviously you're ready to do it. You're ready for it. You got your friggin' Enchantress deck. You're ready to take on Modern and go 5-0 in the next league. You're gonna be doing it. So I hope you do. I hope you do. I mean, who knows if this deck could be good, could be garbage, whatever. We have Stony Silence. Obviously, it's very good against artifacts. How could you ever lose? How could you ever lose? But anyways, so thanks for stopping by, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this got your noggin jogging. Yeah, and have a nice day.